If you have your Bibles, turn with me to the second book of John. We're starting a new book, guys. Like we were in First John for so long. Now we're starting Second John, and we're going to finish it in one day. How awesome is that? So over the next couple weeks, we're going to be finishing up the letters from John to the church. It's going to be a great time, so you don't want to miss out. As I've looked through these books and our letters, as I've read these letters, the more I read the letters from John to the church, the more I see how much history is repeating itself. I mean, like I sit there and go, like, holy cow! Like everything he's writing in this book could be absolutely written to the church today. Could absolutely applies today. The Roman culture of this time period was so closely aligned to ours. So if I were to say, what is the God of our culture? Like, what is like the overarching, like, what are people worshiping? And I would say it would be self-gratification. That's the God of our current culture. It's all about like what makes me feel good, what I need. Who cares who it hurts or what it does? Like as long as I'm happy and I'm taking care of it, that's what I want. And that's what was going on in the Roman culture. They were carnal. It was all about their needs. They were violent. It was like they were like worshiping these gods of sex and flesh. It was like that was their culture. I'm like, oh man, sounds just like our culture today. So as we open this letter, John opens it in a different way than most letters are written. A lot of letters in the Bible are written to they specifically address a people or a group or whatnot. John doesn't start out that way. He starts out in 2 John chapter 1, verse 1, he says, the elder to the elect lady and her children. So he addresses that. He doesn't address himself as the apostle. He doesn't address himself as the disciple. He doesn't address himself by name. He doesn't address himself as like friend of Jesus. He says the elder. What you got to know is John wrote these letters in his old age. Like he was up in there in years. Had some gray hair going. Maybe he didn't have any hair. We don't know. But John was up there in age. And I know in my own life, when an older person gives me advice over something that they've experienced, I might want to listen because they got experience. Now, if you open the letter hey, the new guy, or the guy that's been at this for a week. You know, we live in that culture too. You know, the guy that's been doing a job for a week now is an expert. You know, I don't know if you've experienced that, but I experienced that a lot in my people. But like this is a guy who knows something, who has experienced something. I can remember this old man that worked with me when I was driving a truck at High Plains Hole. He had been in Vietnam. He had been blown up in a foxhole. And he had somehow cut off his big toe with a lawnmower. And like he would take, like, Bill Womble, it'd take him like an hour and a half to walk across the yard, it seemed like. But if Bill Womble was coming, he had something to say. And I can remember one day we had these dry box trailer vans, semi-trailers, and I had to put a net up in it. So I'd climb up in the back of the trailer, I'd hang my net, and then I'd jump off the back of the trailer. So it was about 4 foot off the ground. And all of a sudden, Bill starts walking towards me. And he gets over there to me, he hobbles, it's like, I mean, it was this bad, guys. And he finally gets over there to me, he says, in about 10 years, you're going to regret every time you jumped out of that trailer. And then he walked back. He wasn't wrong, y'all. Like, 42 years old now, and I was like, I regret every time I jumped off a trailer. I regret, but like you listen to somebody when they're older, eventually you start doing that, young people. But he addresses this, the elder to the elect lady and her children. So who's the elect lady and her children? Some scholars believe he was writing to a particular person and a particular family, but most scholars believe that he's talking to the church. He's addressing the church as the elect lady and her children. So that would be like Freedom Chapel. It's not a building. We are a church, a body of believers, and her children would be the people that attend the church, that are part of the group. So he's writing the elect lady and children. But he addresses her as one elect, chosen, called by name, elect, and as a lady. This week, John Bevere, there was a video came out from John Bevere, and he was talking about the bride of Christ. Jesus calls us the bride, and he's the groom. So the church is his bride. We should be preparing ourselves to be be married to Jesus at the wedding supper of the Lamb. So this idea that the church, and I know, guys, it's hard to sometimes go like, I'm a bride. But if you're a believer in Jesus, you're a bride, okay? Just get over it. But John Bevere is talking about it, and he says, we don't really grasp this idea that we're supposed to be the bride of Christ. And you think about a bride who has saved herself for marriage, who is preparing to be betrothed or to someone. And if you go back to the Near Eastern society of this time period, most of the time it was an arranged marriage. Okay, so arranged marriage, and the guy was given something of value in order to get that woman's hand in marriage. So the more valuable the bride, the bigger the dowry. And we can look at that and go like, that's terrible, and but that's their culture. But and this reality is, if I'm the bride of Christ, we're the bride of Christ, the dowry he paid for us was his life on the cross. He paid a great price for his bride. And John said, but we take it and we basically go with this attitude of like, Jesus, I'm completely committed to you and to be married to you, but I've got this other guy, and I want to spend a week a year with him. Or I've got this other, I want to, but I'm completely devoted to you. But I want to give, I got these other side hustles that I just don't want to give up, and I don't want to get rid of. I don't want it out of my life. I really enjoy that, and I just want that too. I mean, how many any single guys in here? If you're a single guy, anybody? Okay, single guys. How many of you guys? Who wants to be married to a girl with side hustles? Anybody? Any single guy? Any married guy want to be married to somebody with side hustles? But that's the bride we present as ourselves, like so many times, like, Jesus, I want to be solely devoted to you, but I still want to party. Jesus, I want to be totally devoted to you, but I still want to watch porn. I want to be totally devoted to you, but I still want this. I still want, and like that. That's what we're presenting. So when he's addressing the elder, like the elect lady, you got to kind of think of a lady, like, and I'm not talking about the book like Great Expectations, like prim and proper, got the corset on, not that kind of lady. I'm talking about like you think of like attributes of someone, a woman of high esteem. Like when you think of women of high esteem and how they carry themselves and how they do things, like I know my wife, she cares a lot more about how the house looks than I do. Like the house being clean when people coming over is a lot more important to her than it is to me. Being hospitable and taking care of our guests, a lot more important to her than it is to me. She'll be like, hey, you want something to drink? I'm like, oh, yeah, you want something to drink? I've been talking to you for 30 minutes, haven't offered you something to drink. Like the hospitality of a lady, the caring about how the appearance of the temple, of the house. That like you think of these things that like I want you to kind of get a visual image of like what you see as a woman of high esteem, highly respected woman, and that's what the church is supposed to look like. So when he says the elect lady and her children, you think about that, like. I don't like, when like my kids, when I people over and my kids are acting like fools, I get a little frustrated. So when we have guests here at the church and they're visiting and everything, I don't like it when the church people are acting like fools. Or children. When we're not friendly, when we're not hospitable, when we don't care about others, when we're like more worried about my seat. Like that's why I love it when someone new comes in and sits where somebody sits normally. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna shake it up today. But you people like move around on me. I got like general sections where people sit and then someone's sitting over here that belongs over here. It's confusing sometimes. But this reality of this is we're called as a church to be the elect lady and her children. As a church body, we're supposed to be like held in high esteem when people like hear about us, look at us, and see things like and see the people of God in our church. Like there needs to be these attributes of it, and He's going to deal with that as we go into this. From this point on, after this, John begins to hone in on three major points. And the title of my sermon this morning covers those 3 points. It's truth, love, and shady people. So he's going to deal with truth, love, and shady people. Okay? We're going to start out with truth. 2 John 1 through 4. It says, the elder to the elect lady and her children, whom I love in truth. And not only I, but also all who know the truth. That's 2 times. First verse, 2 times, word truth. Because of the truth that abides in us and will be with us forever. 3 times. Grace, mercy, and peace will be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, in truth and love. Now we're at 4 times. I rejoice greatly to find some of your children walking in truth 5 times, just as we were commanded by the Father. Now you'd think if he uses the word 5 times, it might be important. 4 verses, 5 times. Like truth is important. Truth matters. He's dealing with a cultural, a society that's in decline. He's dealing with a church, a system and everything. And like he first off, he emphasizes, there's an important thing you got to understand. Truth. Truth. So let's deal with truth. My concordance, one of my concordances that I use for studying, put it best, and I'm going to read directly from it. It says, John refers to truth 5 times in the first 4 verses of this brief letter. In contrast to so many in our culture who dogmatically deny truth. The word dogma is a system of beliefs. So there's a system of beliefs in our culture that denies truth. There are no ultimate realities, or absurdly define it according to personal preference. Your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. John declared that there's an existence of an absolute. God is the ultimate standard by which all else can be judged. God is true. His words and ways are true, and whatever and whoever contradicts or opposes him is false, deceitful, and dangerous. Christian leaders and teachers and parents must engage now in the difficult but critical battle for truth. To paraphrase a familiar saying, all that is required for deception to triumph is for the people of truth to do nothing. I'm going to repeat that. All that is required for deception to triumph is for people of truth to do nothing. But what is truth? Better yet, who is truth? John 14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is the truth. We live in a world where this atheistic mindset is rampant in our days. This truth, your truth, my truth is rampant in our days. in our time, and you have this saying, but it all pulls from a moral standard from somewhere. So if there's not a God, there's got to be a moral standard, because then at that point, what is good? How do you know? How do you define good? And like, well, like, because you're good, if your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth, and your good is your good and my good is my good, then if, and we're doing this whole idea of Darwinism, of survival of the fittest, that means if I'm stronger than you and you have something that I want, I should be able to take it, right? But then we go, no, it's wrong to steal. By what standard? It's not stealing if I'm stronger than you, and my truth says that I should be able to take from you what I want, right? It's my truth. Well, your truth can't trump my truth. Well, then you're saying your truth is better than my truth. Well, no, it's not what I'm saying. Like, and just like this circle, you could like just go in circles with this all day long of like, well, no, that's not what I'm saying. There has to be an absolute good by which all good is measured. And I believe that absolute good is God, and he sent his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross for our sins. And his standard, which is written throughout this book, all the way through this book, it's written out there. And if I read it and I study it and I get to know it and it becomes part of my life, I will understand truth. It's not hard to find. I believe there's absolute truth, absolute good, and it's found in God. And Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He didn't say, I am a way, I am a truth, I am a life. He says, I am the way, I'm it. You can't get there any other way but me. I'm the door, the lock, the key, I'm it. I'm it. There's no side door, there's no back door, there's only one door. And he's it. That's what he said. So if I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm going to have a relationship with Jesus, I'm going to accept he's the truth. Ephesians 4:20 through 21, Paul writes, he says, but that is not the way you learned Christ, assuming that you heard about him and were taught in him, as the truth is in Jesus. So not only is he the truth, but truth is in him. So how do I find truth? I got to get into Jesus. I got to let the truth saturate me. I got to realize Jesus is truth. Okay? Now there's this cockamamie, like messed up mindset that's going on. And this week I saw a brief video from Jelly Roll talking about God and everything, and he's got one thing right. And a lot of us only talk to God when we're in trouble, when I need something. You know, he's got the one thing right, but his doctrine is terrible. But he's grabbed on this idea, like, well, look, if we really like Jesus, wouldn't we be doing this, we'd be doing that, and everything. Like, okay, here's something you need to understand. Jesus did not eat with sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, and the likes to be culturally inclusive. It wasn't about inclusion. It wasn't about acceptance of sin. He did it in order to lead them out of their sin and into new life. That's what he did. That's why he did that. That's why he ate with them. Now he was against religious, like the religious elite, and we got a lot of that in the church too. Religious elite that like just so full of themselves, and so he went after those guys too. But the reality was, every time he met with somebody and did something, it was always go and sin no more. Because Jesus has this amazing ability to meet us right where we're at. It's not like, hey, come get cleaned up and then come back to me. We come to him in all our rags, all our disgustedness, all our mess. We come to him that way, and then he says, hey, I'm going to clothe you in my righteousness. I'm going to make you right before God. I'm going to do this for you. And he loves us too much to leave us there. Like, I'm not going to leave you here. I mean, what kind of God do you, who wants to serve a God that finds you in the gutter? dusts you off, gives you a meal, and then leaves you in the gutter. But that's the way we do a lot of things spiritually. God, don't touch that. Don't touch that. Well, that's gutter stuff. That's gutter stuff. That's the stuff that harms you and breaks and like makes your life miserable. That's gutter stuff. Matthew's a prime example. Guy was a tax collector. He was a thief. He was robbing his own people. And you read the book of Matthew and see how his life has changed because of Jesus and everything. He didn't stay the same. Paul was a murderer, a religious zealot. After an encounter with Jesus, his life was forever changed. And you see it throughout the letters. Jesus changes lives. And then he says this thing. He says, I'm glad I met some of your children that followed the truth. And like I read that, and at first I'm like thinking it was kind of like almost a swipe. Like, I'm glad that some of your children are following the truth. But the reality of it, if you read the letter and you read it from the way John's writing, is like he's ecstatic that he's met some of the people from that church body, and they're followers of the truth, and they begin and they living out truth, and they're walking in truth, and because of it, he's like, man, I met some of your people, and I mean, woo, they got it going on. And I begin to say, like, what would it be like if John met some of our people? Like if John's walking and everything, and he runs into Aaron. And he starts talking to him, like, well, what's going on out of Freedom Chapel? And Aaron begins to talk about it and say what's going on out there at the church and how, just with and everything. Like, they're following the truth. I honestly believe, as I look around the room, that he'd be like, John would write the same letter. He'd start the letter out the same way. He'd start it out the same way because I believe that you as a people, we're inviting, we're hospitable, we're loving, we're working at this whole thing of being a bride that's presentable to Christ. We're working on it. And what we find when we walk and work at it, when we're allowing God to work, that we find ourselves walking in grace, mercy, and peace. Those are hallmarks of the church. You want building blocks to grow a church? You need to have a little grace, have a little mercy, and you need to have some peace. And people that are living by it. 2 John 3, verse 3, grace, mercy, and peace will be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, in truth and love. If you go back to the epistle of John, his letter where he's talking about Jesus and what Jesus did, John 1, 16 through 17 says, For from his fullness we have received grace upon grace. The law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. You see, God gives us grace that's a never-ending continual supply. It's like it builds upon itself. Grace upon grace, grace upon grace. So, one of my concordances said this way: just as on measure of grace, just as one measure of grace is used up, another replaces it. As one measure of grace comes in, the next one comes in, and like we think of grace in the way of I just gonna live however I want, and God's grace is just there. No, what is grace? Grace is God's undeserved favor shown to sinners, whereby he saves them and gives them strength to live for him. Okay? Grace is God's undeserved favor shown to sinners, whereby he saves them and gives them strength to live for him. So his grace isn't just like covering of your stuff and letting you do whatever you want. No, his grace comes in and it not only covers you, but it strengthens you to live for him and walk with him. Come on, church. God gives you strength to live for him. He gives you strength to live for him. If we're seeking him and chasing after him, we're reading his word, we're getting it, like we're strengthened, and it's strengthened to live for him and to push aside the old ways and the old life and the carnal things that come in and like feel good, the feel good stuff. And God reveals his mercy by forgiving and freeing people from their sin. His mercy comes in when I do mess up. His mercy comes in like he could smite me. I mean, there's some of us, if we really we're honest this morning, we deserve to get struck by lightning. God, I got him, idiot. There's those moments in my life. God, I deserve to be messed up right now. I'm sorry. But this reality of his mercy comes in and forgives us and frees us from sin. See, and then his mercy and knowing that of his grace produces peace between people and God. It produces this peace that passes understanding, this peace that I know I'm no longer at war with God. No longer am I on the roller coaster of am I okay with God? No, I'm okay with God. He couldn't love me anymore, and he already loves me. But he loves me enough to not leave me where I'm at. Loves me enough to not let me continue to be where I'm at. These first four verses are so full of encouragement. Live in truth. Walk in truth. You're in the truth. We found people from your body that are living out truth. It's so full of encouragement because he's so ecstatic. He's so he's man, you got things going on there. You got things going on there. And then he moves from that point to the next point of which is John's favorite point. John's most known for being the love guy. Verse 5-6. And now I ask you, dear lady, not as though I'm writing you a new commandment, but the one that you've had from the beginning, that we love one another. Love one another. Dear lady. That's a term of endearment. It's not just hey lady. Hey lady. Love one another. Hey, lady. No, it's dear lady, dear church, dear people of God, I'm not writing you with a new command. I got nothing new to tell you to do because you know what to do. You know what to do. Honestly, there ain't a person sitting in this room who has been walking with God for very long that doesn't know what they need to do. We battle it. We want to make excuses. We want to argue it. We want to take the stuff out that we don't like. But if you're following God and you have a relationship with God, you know what to do. You know how to live. You know when you're up to something you shouldn't be doing. You know. You don't need a new commandment. You don't need me to come in here on Sunday morning. Okay, God said this week, don't do X. Don't do this. You don't need me to come in because you know. What you need is encouragement that you keep moving on. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep moving forward. Keep moving closer to God. Get rid of some of the stuff. We need encouragement for that. I need encouragement in that. He says, and this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment, just as you heard from the beginning, so you should walk in it. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Those two things, if we grab that wraps itself, it encapsulates all the 10 commandments. Begin to walk in that, and we begin to grow in that. We begin to do that and everything, and we begin to love one another. When the children of God are loving on one another, it permeates out of the building into others' lives and connects us with others. It just does. When a church has love in it, people know. People know. And then finally, he begins to deal with the shady people. He says, watch out for shady people. Watch out for shady people. He says, for many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Such a one is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Watch yourselves so that you may not lose what we have worked for, but may win a full reward. Everyone who goes on ahead and does not abide in the teachings of Christ does not have God. Whoever abides in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your house and give him any greeting. For whoever greets him takes part in his wicked works. We live in a world full of false doctrine and false teaching. We got people, just like back then, you got to think, there they were dealing with Gnosticism and Docetism, and this idea of you don't have to do the stuff, Jesus wasn't like that. Jesus didn't have it right. You just had to have this higher spirituality, and you can do whatever you want, and everything. As long as you have this higher spirituality, you're close to God. And now we live in a world where it's it doesn't matter what the Bible says. You just do whatever you want and everything, and God's grace covers it. It's just God's the cookie. He brings you milk and cookies, and he's Santa Claus, and he loves on you, and no matter what, he just gives you whatever you want. Just do whatever you want, and you're okay. That's the world we live in. But the reality is there's this false teaching. It's false. It's like these deceivers, these shady people. That's why it's so vital that we have deacons and leaders in the church that are being mindful and watchful for people that creep in and begin. Because you know what a false teacher or those people, the first thing they do is start trying to peel people off. They start on the outside, they come in and they start trying to peel people off with new ideas and new thoughts. I got something new. Oh, you really don't need to listen to pastor on that. I mean, I've got to be red flags go up for me when the minute a new person shows up to the church and they tell me they came from another church in town, and they're the first thing out of their mouth is God sent me here to help you, pastor, lead your church. Oh, I got that. I'm covered. You're good. I'm sure the church, there's a church across town that needs your gifting. Because I know that person is going to do nothing but make trouble. They're going to cause trouble. They didn't come to be a part of the church. They came to lead the church. It's they got the church. They have a leader. They asked me to be their leader. We got it. And I got people surrounding me that are building me up and walking with me and doing life with me and holding me in check. I'm accountable to those people. But we got to be careful who we let in, because when that begins to happen, they begin to once they figure out they can't get the pastor, they start grabbing other people in the church and well, your pastor, the Bible says you should take communion every time you meet. You guys only take it on one Sunday a month. So he's not actually following it. That stuff goes on, church. And it begins to divide and begin to question, we got to be careful who we talk to at work. Because they begin to these false teachings, these false stuff. You got to be careful what you're letting in. And that's what he's saying here, be careful. Make sure they're professing Christ. Make sure that they're professing that he is the truth. Make sure that they're going to the Bible and they don't have something else. And the way they don't even let them in your house. I said this in the first service. Very few people have the spiritual wherewithal and the doctrine built up in themselves enough, and the ability to have deep conversations with Mormons and stuff. So don't even let them in your house, because they will begin to crack at your questioning. They'll begin to crack. Don't entertain them. Now there's some that have had the ability to bring someone in their house and get, and change their mind and get them pointed back to Christ. But the vast majority, he causes chaos. So he's don't let shady people in. Don't let them in. Don't be listening. And what was going on in this time period is you had these false teachers come in to the churches after the apostles come in and get things going and establish leadership. They'd have someone come in afterwards don't listen to John. Don't listen to John. You can't. He's way off base. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't listen to Paul, Don't let, and both Paul and John, in their letters, they talk about this, how these false teachers would come in and they'd begin to pull the church, like divide the church and pull people away. So he says, you got to be mindful of that, of what you're letting in, and be careful. You got to be careful. He says, watch yourself so that you do not lose what we have worked for, but win the full reward. Everyone who goes on ahead and does not abide in the teachings of Christ does not have God. Whoever abides in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. Now, I don't believe that you can lose your salvation. I don't believe that you can be like walking down the street and trip and lose your salvation. I do believe you can give it up. I do believe you can give it up. Jesus warned of this. He says, Matthew 24, verse 11 and through 13. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased. He's talking about the end times, y'all. Lawlessness will be increased. The love of many will grow cold. We are seeing this played out in the church at large throughout the world. His love for Christ, his love for truth growing cold. And it's like, oh, we'll just depart from the Bible, depart from sound doctrine, and we'll just go the inclusive route. We're all about that. And like, we'll grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. There's going to be a lot of Christians that for the sake of the feel-good world we live in, are going to walk away from Christ. I mean, there's a major denomination that just had a huge split, and they're not even professing that Jesus was fully God anymore. They're not even they're really discounting it, the personhood of Jesus. This is a major denomination that a lot of those who went to the Assembly of God departed from. So when they begin to cast out Jesus, it's time to walk away. The love of many, we see this. Lawlessness is the rule of the day. There's no rule. I don't need this. I make my own way with Jesus. Well, he says to work out your faith with salvation and trembling. You work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Does not mean that you got to be like terrified of God, but you got to have a reverence to it. My kids, it's a whole lot better for them when it comes to discipline, when they approach me with an attitude of like, hey, Dad, I messed up. Dad, I'm sorry. But when they bow up at me and they're like, and they want to argue and fight with me when they're wrong, I don't handle that very well. But that's not how a lot of us approach God. Who are you to tell me? Well, I kind of created it. All of it. It's all mine. I own it. When you think about your own house, you get like you're living in my house, using my electricity, my internet, like all everything in this house. Yeah, I bought that. That's all mine. You want to continue partaking in that, you will respect me. But that's not how we always approach God. Like, he created it all. He set the system of rules in place. He wrote it in his word. It's all there. And we're like, God, who are you to tell me? He's like, well, it's mine. Thank God, God doesn't always respond to his people how we respond to our kids. I'm so thankful that God doesn't always respond to my disrespect, how I respond to my kids' disrespect. Why? Because he has grace. Quit shaking your head. Grace, mercy, and love, and peace. We have peace with God. But we really need to be children. We really need to look at our walk with God as if we're a bride, preparing ourselves to present to the groom that paid a great price for us. paid a great price for us. Verse 12 and 13, he says, instead, he says, I have many things to write to you, but I'd rather not use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk face to face so that our joy may be complete. The children of your elect sister greet you. He's somewhere with another church body. He sends a greeting from them, wishing that he could come and talk to them and lead them and mentor them. Just like that, we need to be praying for other churches. Other churches in our town. It's not a competition. I love the Ministerial Alliance. I love the fact that this week I had a lunch with another pastor in town, and we talked about, what are you guys doing? How are you focusing on the community? What are you doing? Where are you going? We had this great conversation. Why? Because if every church in town, if there were no empty seats in any church in town, there'd still be lost people in McPherson. They're not competition. They're a sister. Another elected sister. Now, if they've gone away from sound doctrine, they don't want no part of that. But if we're professing Jesus, then we come alongside each other. Same mission to reach the lost for Jesus. That should be our hearts. But for this body, the greatest thing that we need to be concerned with is presenting ourselves as a bride worth what he paid. Giving ourselves to him fully, preparing ourselves fully for his coming, and being children of the truth. Children of the truth. Would you stand with me this morning? Father, I praise you. I thank you for your goodness. God, I pray right now that the Holy Spirit would come and begin to stir in each one of our hearts what exactly you wanted us to hear this morning, take away, whether it be an issue of truth in our life, whether it be an issue of love in our life, God, whether it be an issue of letting shady people come in and teach us false doctrines and we've grabbed a hold of it. But God, I pray that this would be a church that fully surrenders itself to you, and we as a body continue to prepare ourselves for that wedding feast when we're fully united with you again. But until you come, God, I pray that we're filling our lanterns with oil and making sure we're preparing our houses for you, because we want to be worthy of your sacrifice, worthy of the dowry. I pray that would be the cry of each of our hearts. God, would you touch each and every one of us today? If there's someone here who has never accepted you as Lord and Savior, God, I pray that today they'd make a decision to follow you and to walk with you and have a relationship with you. All they have to simply do is confess with their mouth that you are Lord and believe in their hearts that you raised Christ from the dead, and they can be saved. God, I pray they would reconcile their hearts to you. I pray we would all today reconcile our hearts to you and fully surrender to being the elect lady that you called us to be. I praise you and thank you.